Competition work, decorative flower. Today we are going to create a competition work. The design is quite simple to make, but the final result looks very impressive. Later you can use this design for different competitions. One nail in focus, floral or handmade decorations. For a floral nomination, you can create 4 or 5 nails with the same design. And for handmade decorations, you can also use this technique because the decoration is made completely by hand. So let's start. The technique is simple and I will show you everything step by step. The flower. First, let's look at the finished flower. We are going to build it according to a simple pattern. We start with one petal, then place another petal opposite it. Then we add the next petals around the center. The important thing is that the petals should not be too close to each other. We need some empty spaces between them. These empty spaces make the flower look lighter, more elegant and more interesting. So don't try to cover the whole flower with petals. The space between the petals is also part of the design. We can have several large petals and then add smaller petals into the empty spaces. For example, we can make 4 large petals and then add 3 smaller petals. The exact number can be different depending on the flower we want to create. The easiest way is to keep my flower pattern next to you while you work. You can take a photo or make a screenshot and simply follow the same pattern. The wire. Now let's talk about what we need. We are going to make the petal structure from wire. Use thin wire that is normally used for making or weaving beads and jewelry. You can even ask your husband if he has this type of wire at home. The most important thing is that the wire should be flexible but strong. It should bend easily, but it should not break when we create the shape. I use wire for bead weaving and it works very well for this technique. Creating the petal. Now let's create our first petal. I take the wire and make the basic shape of the petal. Then closer to the tip, I bend it slightly. The petal should not be completely flat. If we look at real flowers, their petals are not straight. They have a natural curve and movement. So we want to create the same effect here. Make a small curve at the tip of the petal. It doesn't need to be a strong bend. Just a small curve is enough to give the petal a more natural shape. This is important because later, when we put all the petals together, we want our flower to have volume, movement and depth. So remember, don't make the petals completely flat. Give them a little curve. This small detail will make the final flower look much more beautiful and three-dimensional. Competition work, creating the petals. Now I will draw on a piece of paper how the petal should look approximately from the side. A real flower petal is never completely straight. It always has a natural curve. So when we make our petals, we try to create this curve from the very beginning. Later, when we put all the petals together, we will see that we get different layers. These layers will help us build the whole flower and give it volume. I already have several petals prepared, but now I want to show you exactly how to make one petal from the beginning. Step 1. Preparing the wire. First, take any small wire cutters and cut approximately 10 centimeters of wire. Then we bend and press the wire and create the shape of the petal, exactly as you can see in the video. There is absolutely nothing difficult here. If your wire is good and flexible, it will bend easily, and creating one petal literally takes just a few seconds. As soon as we have the basic shape, we immediately give the petal a small curve. Remember, the petal should not be completely flat. Step 2. Choosing the material. Now let's talk about what I used to create the actual petal. I tested different materials, I tried transparent gel and several other products, but personally I liked working with top coat the most. You can use a colored top, like I am using now, or you can use a transparent top. If you only have a transparent top, you can mix it with a little colored gel and create your own colored top. The most important thing is that the top should have the right consistency. It should be semi-liquid. It should not be too thick, but it also should not be extremely runny. Step 3. Coating the petal. Now we take our wire petal and dip it into the top. It is important to dip the whole petal completely into the product. Make sure that the product covers the entire wire and that there is no empty space or air around the base of the petal. So we dip it completely, check the base and then immediately put it into the lamp to cure. If you can see that there is some air or an empty space near the base, simply dip the petal again and repeat the process. Sometimes after curing you may look at the petal and understand that the layer is not thick enough. You may also see that there is not enough color. This is especially visible when you work with a glitter or silver top, like I am using now. In this case, I simply dip the petal again and cure it one more time. Don't worry if it doesn't work perfectly on your first petal. Usually, after practicing on the second or third petal, you will understand how much product you need and how to dip it correctly. There is nothing complicated about it. Step 4. Creating all the petals. After curing the first petal, we repeat exactly the same movements with every other petal. The process is always the same. Make the wire shape, create the curve, dip it into the top, check the base, cure it in the lamp. If you want a more transparent and delicate effect, use less product. If you want the petals to look more dense and saturated, use more product. You can also experiment with different colors. There are tops with gold, silver, glitter, and many other effects. You can even create your own color by mixing a transparent top with a small amount of colored gel. The important thing is to keep the correct consistency, not too thick and not too runny. Step 5. Assembling the flower. Now, when all the petals are prepared and cured, we can start assembling our flower. I usually start with the upper petals. We already created different sizes and layers, so now we simply follow the flower pattern that we prepared earlier. We place the petals one by one and start building the flower from the top layer. Assembling the flower. I constantly look at our flower scheme while I am working and use it as a guide. I assemble the flower step by step, checking the position of each petal and turning the flower as I work. The wire is very flexible, so it is easy to work with and easy to shape. Size and color. The flowers can be larger or smaller. Everything depends on the size of the petals you create. You can also experiment with the color of the wire and the color of the top. As I said before, you can mix a transparent top with glitter and create your own version, or you can use a ready-made glitter top. I find that glitter tops work especially well for this technique because they have a nice flexible consistency. You can also mix the top with gel polish and create a beautiful stained glass effect. And with the wire, you can simply use whatever color you can find. For example, it would look beautiful with gold wire and gold glitter, or silver wire with a silver top. In my case, I found red wire, and I am using a combination of red and silver top. So I have already assembled the first upper pair of petals. Now I need to add the lower pair of petals. You can also take 3 petals at the same time and twist the 3 wires together. Then you can add the petals little by little to the main structure. You need to try both methods and see which one is more comfortable for you. Finishing the flower. Now we continue assembling the whole flower. When you finish, we need to leave some wire at the bottom. This wire will help us later to attach the flower to the nail. If you are creating this specifically for a competition piece that will only be photographed, you normally will not show the backside of the nail. So in this case, it is not very important what the bottom of the decoration looks like. But if you want to present the work in person and the judges will be able to see the nail from all sides, then you should make the backside much cleaner and think about how you are going to finish it. For now, we simply continue adding the lower petals and twisting all the wires together. Little by little, the whole structure becomes one beautiful flower. There is absolutely nothing complicated here. It is mainly a question of practice and getting used to the technique. Once you understand how the wire behaves and how much you need to bend it, you can create the flower very quickly. Adding the center. Now we have another important step. We need to decorate the center of the flower. At the moment, you may feel that the flower looks a little empty. It has the petals, but the center is missing something. So now we are going to create a beautiful center. For this, I will use different large decorative elements to make the middle of the flower more interesting and give the whole design a finished, luxurious look. Decorating the center of the flower. If you regularly do nail inlay and decorations for your clients, you probably already have different Swarovski crystals and other decorations. I also have large beads because I really like 3D nail art and different types of decoration. I often use large beads for this kind of work. So the first thing we need is large beads. I have them in different colors. You can use special beads for nail art, but you don't have to. You can also take an old necklace or some old jewelry that you no longer use and take the beads from it. If you don't have decorations specifically for nails, this is a very good option. I also have bouillons in different sizes. You can use small beads or even seed beads that are normally used for sewing and embroidery. And of course, I also have Swarovski crystals. But my Swarovski crystals are not the usual flat ones. I really like using triangular or cone-shaped crystals, especially the ones designed for nail inlay. I prefer them instead of flat crystals because they reflect the light much better. Because of their shape, the light enters the crystal and reflects in different directions, so they sparkle much more beautifully. Attaching the decoration. Now I need to attach this whole decoration to the flower. You can use a very thick rubber base for this. Personally, I use a thick transparent builder gel. It works very well because it is a jelly type gel. The advantage is that it doesn't run, so I can put the gel where I need it and then work calmly, adding all my decorations without having to constantly control the product. Because I want the center of the flower to be quite dense, I need to use a good amount of gel. I apply enough product to create a strong base for all the decorations. And there is one more important thing I want you to remember. Be careful with transparent gels. Transparent gels can cure very quickly when you work under the lamps that we use for filming. For example, my filming desk lamp seems to have a stronger UV spectrum, and because of this, my transparent top sometimes starts curing before I am finished. So when I work with transparent products, I try to work quite quickly. I create my inlay and then cure it. How I build the center. Now let's look at how I create the center of the flower. I start with the largest stone or bead and place it right in the center. Then I start adding slightly smaller stones around it. And between these stones, I always add even smaller ones. The idea is that there should be almost no empty space between the decorations. This is the same principle that we use when we create a dense nail inlay. We start with one large central stone. Then we add several smaller stones around it. After that, we fill the spaces between them with even smaller crystals. I especially like using these triangular cone-shaped crystals because they fit beautifully into the small spaces. So the structure becomes large central stone to smaller stones around it to even smaller stones between them. This creates a very dense and rich decoration. There are almost no empty spaces and the center looks much more luxurious. Finishing the flower. When I finish the inlay, I can cover the flower with another layer of top. Why do I do this? Because I want the petals to look more transparent and more shiny. I can cover the flower with top from one side and then from the other side. And that's it. There is really nothing complicated about this technique. The technique itself is very simple. The most important thing is simply to sit down and make a few flowers. Once you have practiced and made several of them, you will see how quickly you can create them. And later you can use these handmade flowers on many different nail designs and create completely different competition and salon Preparing looks. The competition. Now let's prepare our competition nail. We are going to create a stiletto and I will show you two different techniques for making a very long competition nail. Technique 1, using upper forms. The first technique is using upper forms. If you don't have very long upper forms, you can make them yourself. In fact, you can create upper forms of almost any length by connecting several forms together. This technique was actually used even before very long upper forms became available. I wanted to create competition nails, so I developed this method myself. First, take an upper form that fits the natural nail you are going to work on. Then take another upper form that is slightly smaller. Cut the second form in the area where the nail bed should be. After that, adjust the free edge of the larger upper form. Now we can slightly heat the plastic. The plastic melts easily, so we can use this method to connect the two forms together. It takes a little practice, but the technique itself is very simple. This is a quick and easy way to make 5 long upper forms for your own hand. You can prepare them once and keep them ready for future competition designs. Then, when you want to create another competition set, you already have your long forms prepared. Of course, you can also buy very long upper forms. In that case, I recommend looking for the longest and most extreme forms you can find, especially if you want to create very dramatic competition nails. But when I cannot find forms that are long enough, I simply make them myself. After connecting the forms, I smooth the inside and then check the length on the nail. Look at how long the nail becomes. And if I want, I can make it even longer at the tip. It's actually a very useful technique. Why? Because if you create these extremely long nails directly on the hand, using regular forms every time, you have to spend a lot of time building and filing them. With this method, you already have a ready-made form. Then you can create your competition nails much faster. All the nails that I am showing you here were also made using this method. I already have a set of 5 forms prepared for myself. This is how I create long, but not extremely long, competition nails in a stiletto shape. Technique 2. Extra long competition nails. Now I want to show you another method for creating even more extreme lengths. Again, if you make your preparation from upper forms and connect several forms together, this works very well when you need 5 extremely long nails. But if you are creating a one nail in focus competition piece, you can go even longer. When the attention is concentrated on one nail, you can make the length much more extreme. For this technique, I use a regular paper nail form. This is our second method. I cut the form and connect the pieces together. It is very important to connect them accurately. Look at the markings on the form. When I join the pieces, the lines must match perfectly, one to one. Here I am showing you how the length of the upper form corresponds to the length of the regular paper form. But for the flower that we are creating, this length is not enough. My flower is quite large, so I want the nail to be much longer. I want it to be more dramatic, more accentuated, and more impressive. So I choose an extremely long length. At this point, the only real limitation is your imagination. And as I said before, the main advantage of this technique is that you will have to do very little filing. This is the whole idea of this lesson. Create a competition nail with much less work than we needed before. Previously, creating nails of this length could take 2 days. First, you had to build the entire nail. Then you had to spend a very long time filing and shaping it. With this technique, we can create the same kind of dramatic competition nail much faster and with much less filing. And if you are a trainer, this is also a technique you can use with your students. You can teach them how to create long competition nails quickly, easily, and with minimal filing. Preparing the natural nail. For this type of work, I also use a peel-off base. First, I apply a little bit of oil underneath. I let the oil absorb and then I apply the peel-off base. This is especially useful when I am creating content or competition samples that I want to remove later. We cut the little tabs on the sides of the form. As usual, everything is prepared. And now we are ready to install the form and start creating our competition nail. Removing the paper form and building the extreme length. Now we can remove the paper form. If this were a regular nail course, I would tell you that the tabs at the back need to be connected perfectly. And of course, we still try to connect them as well as possible. But from my own experience, when the length is extremely long, it is not always possible to make these tabs absolutely perfect. So of course, try to connect them neatly, but don't worry if it is not completely perfect. There is another important point. When we are creating competition nails specifically for photography, we normally don't need to photograph the backside of the nail. So in this case, the backside does not have to look absolutely perfect. We simply do our best. Fixing the paper form. Now we connect all the tabs at the bottom. I use a little bit of base gel to connect and fix the form. Why do I use base? Because I need to fix the nail not only for the final photograph, but also while I am actually building and modeling the nail. An extremely long lower form needs something to support it. So I use my own hand as a kind of mannequin or support. This allows me to fix the form and build the nail on it. Now we connect all the lower tabs and try to make the extreme nail as straight and even as possible. We want to make the structure as narrow as possible. Take your time here and try to keep the shape straight and clean. My life hack, using an upper form. And now I want to show you my little life hack. As I told you from the beginning, the idea of this technique is to make the process easy and to do as little filing as possible. So we are going to use an upper form on top. If you are worried about pressing the upper form too much, you can use the same protective gel drop that we talked about earlier. The protective drop can be approximately 2 millimeters thick. Place this drop so that you don't press the upper form too strongly onto the nail. Now take your polygel and place it inside the upper form. I am using this beautiful camouflage color. Fill the upper form with the material and then place it onto the nail. Press it into position. Where to place the protective drops? I recommend using 2 protective drops. The first one goes in the stress zone and the second one goes closer to the free edge. This helps control the pressure when we place the upper form. Then we cure it in the lamp. Some of the gel will naturally come out from underneath the upper form. Don't worry about this. When you place the next upper form, this excess material will be hidden underneath the next form. And this is how I can create a very long nail while doing much less filing later. Of course, there will still be some filing, but it will be many times less than if we built the whole extreme length completely by hand. Why this technique works? Using this method gives us a very good result on both sides. On the bottom, we have the paper form, so we get a clean and controlled underside. On the top, we use upper forms, which give us a much more accurate shape and significantly reduce the amount of filing we need to do later. The only thing I do before using the upper form is cut out the nail bed area of the upper form. This allows me to use it correctly for this very long structure. After the material has cured, I remove the upper form using a little bit of oil. Then I can remove the lower paper form as well. And now we have our very long competition nail with a good structure, but with much less filing than we would normally need for this kind of extreme length. Final shaping of the competition. Nail. There is one more important thing I forgot to mention. When you place your first upper form, the one closest to the natural nail, it will usually fit the nail quite well. But the next upper forms, as we move further along the extreme length, will be wider than we need, not thicker, wider. So, when you place them, simply press the sides with your fingers and make the upper form narrower. You shape it with your fingers to fit the width that you need. But remember, it is not possible to make an extremely long nail with absolutely zero filing. The upper forms will not always have exactly the right width for every part of this extreme length, so we still need some filing at the end. Checking the shape. Now look at what we have created. We have this beautiful, very long shape. I don't even know if we should call it a bamboo shape or simply an extreme long nail. Now I want to place our flowers on it and check how they look. And look how beautiful this is. You can already see how impressive the final competition design is going to be. Filing the nail. Now I take the nail and start working on the length. I use both methods. I work with a nail file and I also use an e-file. But as I said before, the amount of filing is much smaller than it would normally be for a nail this long. When you use the file, keep it straight and even. And now let's talk about the shape. A stiletto, just like the modern almond we studied before, is based on a triangular shape when we look at it from the top. The lower side parallel should also be straight, but the upper line works differently. The stiletto shape. The stiletto is actually a hybrid shape. It takes some elements from the classic almond. The lower side parallel comes from the classic almond. The upper part also follows the classic almond idea. The apex and the stress zone are located in the same area, and from there the structure gradually goes down toward the free edge. So when we look at the nail from the side, it does not stay completely straight on top of the nail. It has a smooth, natural descent. But when we look at the nail from the top, the shape is fitted into a triangle, just like the modern almond. This is what creates the characteristic sharp and elegant stiletto shape. Minimal filing. Now I file as much as I need to create the final shape. But remember one more important thing. If we are creating this work specifically for photography, nobody is going to look underneath the nail. They will not see whether the underside is absolutely perfect or not. So our priority is the part that will actually be visible in the final photographs. Of course, if I see that there is not enough material somewhere, I can add a little more. If I see that something has not cured completely, I cure it again. Then I continue filing and shaping until I get the final result. And this is what we get, a beautiful, very long stiletto nail. How much time does this method save? Now imagine trying to create this exact shape directly on your own hand. You would have to build this extreme length first and then file the entire structure. It is very difficult. And it can also be quite uncomfortable and even painful because such a long nail can move while you are working on it. This is why this method is so useful. Let me tell you approximately how much time I spend on the whole process. For the flowers, I spend about 1 hour for 3 flowers. Then the inlay takes approximately another 1.5 to 2 hours. So altogether, the flowers and the decoration take me up to about 3 hours. And creating this competition nail itself takes me approximately 2 hours. So the complete work takes around 5 hours. If we were doing this in the traditional way, without these little techniques and shortcuts, we would spend more than a full day just building and filing the extreme nail. And then we would need another day to make the flowers. With our method, we can have the complete competition work ready in approximately 5 hours. That is a huge difference, bit finishing the nail. And finally, I fix the nail using double-sided tape. After that, I cover the nail with top coat. And our competition nail is ready for the final presentation and photography. Assembling the final composition. Now we are going to assemble our final composition. I have 3 flowers, 1 large, 1 a little smaller, and 1 very small. We simply attach them using the wire, and that's it. Again, I want to repeat one important point. If this work is being created for a championship photo, it is absolutely not important how the flowers are fixed underneath the nail. What matters is that the composition looks beautiful from the top. If the work is going to be presented in person, then of course the situation is different. There used to be championships where you had to send the actual physical work to the judges. I don't know if competitions like this still exist, because recently I have mainly worked with championships where the work is judged from photographs. And when we are working for a photograph, our main goal is to create a wow effect. This is exactly what we are creating here. So we attach our flowers and then we take photographs. From the top, from the side, and from different angles to show the volume of the design. Preparing the nail for the photo. For the photograph, I use a little bit of oil again. Then I take a large drop of transparent gel and place this nail directly onto the large drop of gel. This helps me temporarily fix the nail on my hand and position it exactly where I want it. Then I cure it in the lamp. After that, I can decorate and prepare everything for the final photograph. For example, with this particular design, I really like how a denim sleeve looks in the photo. It gives the image a very nice fashion look and works beautifully with the design. Using your own hand. And one more important thing, if you want to use rings in your photograph, put them on before you attach the competition nail to your finger. This is important because once the nail is fixed to your finger, it can be difficult to put the rings on without moving or damaging the composition. I prefer to photograph the competition nail on my own natural hand. In my opinion, a real hand looks much more beautiful and natural than an artificial finger. So, whenever possible, I use my own hand for the final photograph. After the photography is finished, everything can be removed very quickly. The nail comes off and you can prepare your hand for the next design. Final photography. Now we are ready to photograph our competition work. Take photographs from the top, from the side, and from different angles. The most important thing is to show the shape, volume, flowers, and details of the design. If you are using an iPhone, it is also a very good idea to film a video of the finished work. Then, when the video is ready, you can lower the exposure. This helps make the glitter and shine of the top much more visible. And that's it. Our competition design is ready for the final presentation and photography.